HVAC 360, episode number 21. Job site etiquette, Couture, and PPE. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of HVAC 360. I'm your host, Matt Nelson. On this week's episode, we're going to jump into the topic of job site protocols and PPE, or personal protective equipment. And I thought I'd throw in a fancy word, couture, into the subject line. Couture being another word for fashion. That's a fancy word for fashion. And you know what? I mean, clothes on the job site have a lot more to do with protection and function than fashion. But, you know, as an engineer, hey, this equipment, this is couture to me, so leave me alone there. I guess the takeaway from this week's episode, I just want to make sure that everybody gets the basics of what you want to do when you go visit a job site, the protocols to follow, what you need to wear, some of the basic functions. You know, having said that, I am not an expert. You know, I'm not a certified safety expert or anything like that. But you know, I realize that rules and laws vary from country to country. So really take this as a point of departure, like most of the informative topics that I talk about. Take it as a point of departure, and just see what rules and regulations you have in your neck of the woods. We're all here to learn. So here we go. When we talk about job site etiquette, here's the protocols that you want to follow. In general, when you talk about job site etiquette, really there's a general contractor or a CM that's really going to be in charge of the job site. They're going to be in charge of, you know, the security, making sure that things are coordinated properly, people are parking in the right spot, in northern climates, making sure that the snow is cleared away, and you know, if there's, you know, flooding, making sure that gets cleaned up. So really, they're the kind of the protocol police, so to speak, of the job site when we're dealing with new construction, even renovations. So there's always going to be that level of control. And I guess what I want to stress here is that you want to be able to talk to them because they're going to have certain standards that they want to enforce. You know, it's kind of like a ship. You know, like you go onto a ship or an airplane, the captain and pilot, they're in charge. They're responsible for everybody, and I think that you just carry that through to the job site. Take what the CM and the GC, CM construction manager, GC general contractor, what they do, and what the protocols are that they have and policies that they have for their company, and follow that. Really, I think that some of the things that you might encounter with the general contractors or CMs is that they're going to have certain policies in place for, they might have like a little short course. And this is kind of, you know, I'll take a step back here. Depending on the level of your, I guess, the critical nature of what you're doing. You know, it's going to be a lot different if you're building a school than if you're building a retail strip mall, than if you're building a government hospital or some other, you know, high security agency, or if you're going to be, you know, building, you know, something on a job site for a manufacturer. There's going to be all sorts of different types of procedures that are going to be in place. And really, it falls to the general contractor and the CM really to make sure that everybody gets acclimated to that. So if you don't know what you're supposed to do, you know, by all means, make sure that you communicate to these people and kind of pick their brains and saying, hey, you know, what do I need to do? What do I need to bring to the job site? What do I need to do beforehand? You know, sometimes that might involve, you know, taking a course. Maybe it's like a little 4-hour course about the policies and procedures of a certain manufacturing plant. Maybe it's just a, you know, 15-minute overview of here's the job site, here's the policies and procedures that we need to take, you know, here's what to do in these situations. So most of the time you're going to find it's going to be on the ladder. It's not going to be that in depth, but there again, it's on a case by case basis. The more critical the environment is, and the more structured the environment is, the more kind of bells and whistles you're going to have to go in ahead of time. If you're dealing with government work, you might end up having to be fingerprinted, go through a background check, and have a photo ID taken at a official identification creation place. So always keep that in mind. It's not just going to be, hey, jump in the car, go to the job site. Sometimes you really have to plan ahead when you're going to be approaching the job site and know that you have everything in place, so you just don't get turned around. I mean, it could be if you were flying out someplace to go visit a job site, you may not be able to do anything and you have to fly back. So it really is critical that you know what the steps are, the policies that each job site have when you go there. Standard things, signing in, signing out. A lot of times, and especially, I guess I'll say this to engineers and commissioning agents. A lot of times when you're on the job site, you want to make sure that everybody knows. So when you approach the job site, you want to first find whether it be the superintendent for the I'll just, in this example, instead of just saying CM or GC, I'll just refer to the GC, the general contractor, the guy who is in charge of the whole site. You're going to find the superintendent, the person who is supervising that, and you're going to go touch base with them, say, hey, I'm on the job site, sign in, do what you need to do, and just make sure that he knows that you're there. Kind of accomplishes a couple of different facts. If there's somebody looking for you, they know that you're there. If there's something that goes wrong, they know that, hey, you're in there, and they need to get you out. And also, it's really a good idea just to prove that you've been out there. Sometimes commissioning agents I know have sometimes been accused of just being these ghosts, that they'd show up at a job site and then they'd leave and nobody would they'd be like, were they here? Were they ever here? How many times did they come to the job site? I don't know. Use that opportunity to check in and with the superintendent to be able to just kind of validate the fact that, okay, you're on the job site, you're working, here's what you're doing. It gives you a good opportunity too to check up on, hey, is anything going on? What's the progress like? Things like that. Things that you need to, I guess, different situations around etiquette. Sometimes in a lot of scenarios, you're going to have project meetings. Sometimes those project meetings are going to be on the actual job site in a job trailer. A lot of times, I'd say that, I would, park my car, go in there, and not necessarily have a lot of the PPE that I would going on the site. Depending on how strict they are, again, you're going to have to feel that out. But a lot of times I will carry my hard hat. If I'm going to go on the job site later, I'll just make sure I bring it with me, because I'm usually not parking right next to the job trailer when I do that. Obviously, site walkthroughs, you definitely want to gear up through that, and we're going to kind of go through the couture, the fashion, the PPE that you need for that in just a second. But I think that the one thing that I'd point out is typically you're going to end up, whatever the policy is, you're going to end up wearing that protective gear all the way through construction up until the time that some official gives the official go-ahead to say, okay, you know what, you can occupy the building. What we'd call in the United States the certificate of occupancy. Once the certificate of occupancy has been issued, typically that's the signal saying, okay, anybody who has business being in the building can be in the building without protective equipment. There's no fear of anything falling on them, anything like that. So that's what I would use as kind of the benchmark. Again, I default, listen to the GC and the CM. It's their site. default to their protocols. But in general, that's my kind of rule of thumb. The one thing that you want to make sure of is that you don't necessarily want to follow the the rules and what you see with the contractors. A lot of times you're going to see contractors who aren't maybe following the best policies and procedures when it comes to protective equipment. They won't be wearing their eye protection. They won't be wearing hard hats, things of that nature. Don't fall into their trap of not being protected. So you want to make sure that you maintain your own policy consistently throughout. This is not to say that, if you're not, you might take your glasses off because they fog up, or you need to clean them off, or it's for inspection in a certain room, you can take them off. But in general, have your PPE on and establish that policy. So moving on to the protective equipment itself, I'm going to basically start from a bottom-up approach. I'm going to talk a little bit about what in general, what I'm going to recommend is that you establish a policy that dictates, this is the kind of equipment that everybody in the company is going to be wearing on the job site. So it kind of says, sets the standard. Everybody, there's no ambiguity about it. There's no confusion. Nobody says I didn't know. They all have the policy, and they're all gonna follow it. I think that's really that's what you need to do. And here's I guess the pieces of equipment that I'd put into that policy. So before I start, I guess in general, what I want to say is that a lot of this equipment is based on just fitting in general. You want to make sure that there's a couple of different options that you can get when you're looking at protective equipment. I think when you make that choice across all the range here, is that you want to make sure that you pick something that helps you fit in. Again, a lot of times as an engineer, and a lot of times as a commissioning agent, you really don't want to stand out when you're talking with contractors. It's almost like if you buy a new hard hat, you want to go and get it muddy, just to kind of not have that new hard hat look to it. You really you want to be able to fit in. So really make those choices with that bent in mind. So starting with the shoes, it was amazing when I took a look at shoes. Protective shoes come in all shapes and sizes. I think in general, you wanted to get the steel-toed shoes, that have the protective toe. You want to have some sort of non-skid sole. There's special, there's 101 different types of different shoes that you could get based on the type of flooring you're going to be on, and especially in different manufacturing applications. You can get ones that are resistant to oil. You can get ones that are insulated from electricity. There's a lot of different ones. Just get a standard non-skid sole is really, I think, all that you need, in my opinion. You don't necessarily have to go for the metatarsal unless it's recommended by the manufacturer or again by the whoever is in control of the job site. I think just a plain a protective toe shoe is adequate. Now there's a lot of different varieties that you can get. If you want to be fancy, if you're going to go to a fancy meeting but you still want protection, I've even seen these in penny loafers. I guess in general, things that I would want to avoid, obviously, open-toed sandals, heels. Obviously, I'm talking to the ladies here. But I think that, those are some of the things that you want to avoid. I mean, heels on a job site, there's no place for them. You slip, you fall, you twist an ankle. There's metal grates everywhere. So it's really just a bad idea in general to be wearing heels on the job site. So sometimes even depending on the type of weather and the type of conditions you have out there. You might want to have an additional pair of protective shoes, in the variety of the hip waders or the some sort of at least up to your knee kind of rubber shoes. So I mean, it can get really mucky out there, and the last thing you want to do is lose a shoe in there. So or be dancing around. Again, it goes into fitting in. If you can walk around the job site without having to dance around the puddles, it kind of makes you fit in a lot better than if you were if you didn't and you were. So when you talk about moving on to clothes, I guess you really want to gear it towards more rugged clothing. You're going to end up, there's going to be sharp edges here and there. You're going to want to protect yourself. You're going to really want to wear long pants, and that's just kind of period. Long pants. You don't want to, again, gearing towards the ladies. You don't want to be in a dress, in a skirt. I wouldn't recommend that at all. You don't want to have no shorts, no capris. Wear pants to protect full length all the way down to your ankle, just for proper protection. Again, when you're talking about up top, I would go with a collared shirt with long sleeves. You don't want any sort of fancy blouses. You don't want any ties, unless you're just going to the job trailer. Then that might be okay. I still wouldn't necessarily wear a dress or a skirt, but pants and whatever kind of top you want to wear, that's fine. I just wouldn't keep it low cut or anything. Just keep it completely professional. This is not fashion. You're not trying to you want to keep it professional. Whatever you think looks professional, I think that's what you would gear it towards. If it gets hot, you may want to go to a collared polo shirt. Definitely, I would think T-shirts are a no-go in this area. But there again, establish that standard for your company. Is it okay for you to wear jeans on the job site? Is it okay for, or maybe you want to standardize around maybe some sort of khaki Carhartt jeans, some more of a rugged pant that looks more professional. It's at some point it's going to look more like a uniform when you're out there, but I think that's fine. It's that consistency. You want to be protected, so I think it's all good in that vein. The jacket, another thing that you're going to be out there depending on what the weather is. You don't want to necessarily wear a lightweight jacket. You want to have something more rugged. Here's another opportunity for, I picked up a Carhartt jacket, which in the U.S. is kind of more of a rugged workman's type jacket. Wear that to the job site. It really kind of, it gets you to blend in and puts the other contractors at ease. If you're out there wearing a fancy designer coat, they might tend to look at you a little bit funny, even though it may not appear that way. At some level, they're going to think, okay, here's somebody who's really doesn't understand me, who's not at my level. So, dress to blend in that regard. So, next we're going for the vest. Okay, we've talked about the shoes, we've talked about the clothes. Let's talk about a vest. Now, a lot of times I haven't worn a vest in the past, and only on certain job sites where I've been required to. But you know what? I think it's a great idea, and I'll tell you why. This kind of stems back to driving a car. You drive a car and you turn on your headlights, and until you get older, you don't realize, okay, well, it's not to help me see the road better necessarily. I mean, when you talk about those dusk situations when you want to, or when it starts to rain out, it's not that you need your headlights to be able to see in those kind of conditions. There's plenty of light out. That's not a problem. The issue is having you be seen by other people. And the same thing is true with a high-res vest. And there's different kinds of vests. They're cheap, they're inexpensive. I would just stick with, the highest visibility you can get, just a high-vis vest. And what that is there's certain vests that come in. They're usually lightweight, and it's not a big deal. And you can pick them up at any big box hardware, store or other, professional store around. But the high-vis, they actually have, the reflective tape that you'd see on, you think about anybody working on, highways. Just when light shines on it, it just kind of like glows. That's the high-vis sort of vest. They come in high-vis and non-high-vis. There's no reason why you shouldn't get just a high-vis vest, high visibility, that stands for high-vis vest, just out of the box. And again, it's about you being seen. There's a number of times when, I'm just standing around, looking at a set of drawings, looking up. If I can have something that, alerts somebody around me that I'm there, that's a good thing. They don't run into me. I don't run into them. It's perfect. It's money well spent, just to have that high-vis vest on. So I would put that on these standard things, standard PPE that I would wear. Eye protection, very, very, very important. I mean, this really, when you talk about eye protection, probably the most violated piece of safety equipment that people don't tend to wear. And it really is critical. I guess I speak from the standpoint that I've actually, and this is not a job-related incident, but I was out doing, building a tree house for my kids, and I was using a little Dremel drill, and I was just taking off some screw heads on the inside to do some finishing touches. I was wearing safety glasses doing that, yet somehow a shard of that metal managed to embed itself in my eye. And I guess here's my point. It took me a number of trips to the optometrist, to the eye doctor, to really get that out. They got a couple little shards out, but they had to wait for another shard, and it was just a big hassle. Time off work, obviously incidental medical bills, really, and very, very uncomfortable for that time that I had that metal shard in my eye. I mean, it was just the smallest thing. You couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. I could feel it. It looked like, it just felt like somebody had like a 8-penny nail driven in my eye. It was just that annoying. So, again, no reason not to wear the protective glasses. And this is where you don't look around to the other contractors. You wear them religiously. Obviously, there's going to be some times when you're going to take them off, like I said, but wear them as much as you possibly can. Be a good role model for the rest of the contractors out there. The one thing that I will say to make it a little bit easier, and I guess this kind of in the same vein, it makes it easier, but it kind of goes against another safety regulation. But I usually like to keep my safety glasses on a little lanyard, a little thing that attaches to the end of the glasses, if you know what I mean. And then you can put them around your neck, so if you're not wearing them, they can just hang there. That way they're always within reach. You don't have to set them down anywhere or stick them in your pocket or forget about them. They're always just right there. Obviously, it might be some of a safety hazard if you're around equipment that's spinning, but a lot of times you can get ones with little, suction cups on the ends that would just kind of pull away anyway. So not as bad as a tie, but I think that, if they're on your head, you're probably not going to be close enough to those spinny things anyway. When we're talking about, I guess last but not least, let's talk about hard hats. Hard hats, they come in all different shapes and sizes. Different trades tend to have different shaped hard hats. I know that steel workers will tend to have one shape of hard hat. Sometimes the different trades will have different colors of hard hats. I would just pick a white one, unless different. Again, it varies by location. Just pick a white hard hat. Obviously there's a lot of them that you can get with your favorite, sports teams or, your national flag. You get those, but again, in the sense of fitting in, just something plain and white. I think the important thing for the hard hat is just to get one with an adjustable fit on it. They tend to be ones that they have a little knob on the back of them. They're a little bit more expensive than the other ones. Well worth the price, and we're not talking much. It's probably just a couple more dollars to get that adjustable little ratchet thing. So that way you can put it on your head, fit it to your head, and you're good to go from there. So that is it on hard hats. So, and personally, one thing I like to do is, with some of this PPE, especially like hard hats, I'll always keep a spare. You never know when you're taking out somebody, whether it be a new employee or somebody else. Somebody forgets a hard hat. Hey, I got a spare. You can borrow that, just to make sure that people are safe. Hard hat glasses. Usually they'll have their own PPE, but there again, that is kind of the fashion, the Couture, the PPE protective equipment that I would recommend. Part of the policy, you might end up establishing for your company that you're going to pay for a set of PPE. And it really it's not that expensive. Probably the most expensive thing you really pay a good bit of money on are the shoes. The rest are pretty much a commodity, plastic, lightweight fabric, things like that. But the shoes, you're probably going to pay a little bit more on. And I'll just say this: don't skimp on the shoes. If you're going to be out there for a day of testing, runners know this. You just don't buy cheap because it's going to fall apart. It's not going to last, and you're going to have it's just going to kill your feet. So spend a little bit more extra money on getting proper shoes that you can stand in all day, that you can work in and do your testing in and or do your site investigations on. It really is worth it. At the end of the day, a lot of times I just leave them on my car. I'll swap them out with the other pair of shoes that I can just slip on, so I don't necessarily have to wear them in my car. So that way, they're always in the trunk. I don't have to worry about whether I have them or not, and I keep all my PPE in the trunk of my car. So when I go to the job site, I'm all ready. A little bit extra. Let's talk about training. So now we've talked a little bit about the protocols. We've talked a little bit about the fashion of our job. And now let's talk a little bit about training. Because now that we know, okay, what we're supposed to do on the job site and what we're supposed to wear, it's good to know some fundamentals about, just safety in general. In the U.S., we have the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, and they have a standard, like a 10-hour course or a 30-hour course for supervisors. Again, working into your policy, I think it would be a good idea to work some sort of continuing education or some of these certifications into your standard policy. Whether it be NFPA 70, which covers electrical and electrical hazards, things like that. I didn't even get into wearing arc protection, that kind of arc flash protection type of equipment. I'm just talking basic standard walk around the job site equipment. But there again, if that's part of what you do and what you're responsible for, you're going to have to kind of extend what you get as far as PPE. But getting that education on knowing exactly what you need to have and the courses that you need to have, the education that you need to have, very important. And again, work it into your policy. Say, you know what, all our commissioning agents or anybody that goes out in the field has a minimum of this level of training. and some of the supervisors have a advanced level of training. So that's always good to show that you're being proactive, you're being prepared. Another thing that you can do, and a lot of people have weekly meetings in their departments. Not a bad idea to have a toolbox talk. Typically, when you're talking about the contractors, they'll have the job box talk, the toolbox talk, on a weekly basis or a daily basis. Where they'll get together and they'll talk about safety. That's part of their safety program that they'll do, and that sometimes they're required to do for maintaining a safe working environment. And these are some things that you read. It's like 5 minutes, but it may be a good idea. Somebody maybe who's younger in your organization to be able to latch onto this. I'm sure you can find some resources online for just some free tips on things to wear. It's easy. It can go anywhere from tips on the proper use of a ladder. I mean, really, just to be safe. There's a lot of little things that. It's like everybody's like, oh yeah, I know how to use a ladder. Well, really, let's talk about some of the ways that ladders affect people, and falling can really affect people. So determine what's safe, what's not safe. Any knowledge is good knowledge. So whether you're talking about ladders, whether you're talking about what to do in event of an emergency, what to do in event of a spill. Hydration, protection if you're working on a roof, if you have skin lotion, I don't know suntan lotion, I guess. Knowing what sort of protection that you need in those kind of scenarios. So it's always good to be able to take that on a weekly basis and give that to somebody so that you can keep up and you document that. So it looks good and it's good practice. So it's a professional thing to do. All right. So that's pretty much it. We've gone through the job site etiquette. We've gone through the protective equipment and a little bit of training. I think all that kind of covers a lot of what you can do. I think there's some good tips in there, and if you have any other tips, let me know. Give me a holler. You can shoot me an email at matt@buildingx.co, or you can go to the blog and leave a comment on the episode and the show notes at buildingx.co. So if you have any other tips or comments, just let me know. If this is valuable to you, I'd appreciate if you share somebody who may not know of the program. We're trying to build, get this out to as many people as possible. Again, I do this because, I want to share the knowledge that I have, and I think it's important for us to kind of, share what we know. You want to be able to have some programming that's specifically geared towards you and your profession. So this is our opportunity. The more opportunity that we have, the more people that we get together, the greater the community and the greater the sharing that we can actually learn from. So that's kind of why it's important to just share it with one person. Make that your goal today. Share it with one person that may not know, and maybe it's not this episode. Maybe it's another episode that you've listened to. So if you do want to keep in touch with me, you can follow me at Twitter. I'm at BuildingX. And other than that, if you want to know a little bit of insider information or what's coming up on the next shows, you can always sign up for our newsletter. It's on the buildingx.co website, right on the front, on the upper right there. So you can just simple sign up, and we send it out monthly, and they contain little gems of knowledge. So I guess that was it, and I'm going to wrap it up. So until next time, remember, know what you build and share what you know.